Opinions stated in this podcast should not be used as evidence. Assume that any cited evidence can be found in the related Candor Briefs releases. Thank you, and welcome to Former Partners.
Hello, and welcome back to the Former Partners podcast. This is Lucas Monroe.
And this is Quentin Cooper.
And we are two former partners.
Former partners.
Partners again now, working together to bring you some
podcasts.
And what we hope to be quality debate knowledge.
Resources. At no cost.
That's true. The podcast is totally free, as you know, because you're listening to it for free right now. If you paid for this, tell us, because that means somebody's charging for our product, and we're not okay with that.
Yeah. Also, I guess you have to pay for like a cell phone plan or your internet plan.
Yeah, but that's not paying for this product. That's
right.
Paying for the services to access this product. That's different.
Today what we're talking about is the next step in, I guess, debate in general. We're calling it public forum the next step just because we did an intro to public forum.
Wasn't it episode 5? No, this is episode 6, isn't it?
This is episode 6.
Yes.
Yes.
You have episode 4 on the outline.
Yeah, we planned on doing this episode a couple weeks ago.
I think this was the one we were going to do right before I got sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right, yeah.
Sorry for having an average immune system, everybody.
Yeah. So last episode, not last episode, but the last time we talked about this, we did an introduction to public forum. We talked about flowing and case building, the different types of judges, what the speeches are for, that kind of thing. What we're talking about today are more in-depth approaches, strategies to use, things to use at, I want to say a higher level. It's not necessarily a higher level. It's just things that you learn to do the more you debate, as you get more introduced to the debate world.
Yeah, we're really trying to skirt around this idea that we are phenomenal debaters that are sharing this like godly knowledge with you that's going to help you win every round, because that's not what this is at all. This is two people who had some experience with speech and debate doing their best to relay our experiences to you and to see if there's any way you can apply it.
Right. This podcast came to be just because we were looking at what resources exist and the resources we wish existed when we were in debate. So we decided to make a podcast about it. We don't think we're the best to give advice necessarily, but nobody else was when we started doing this, so.
We saw a need and we're trying to fill that need. Simple as that.
So the first thing we want to talk about is flex cases. A flex case is when, at least in public forum, you choose second speaker if you win the coin flip, or just get second speaker. Instead of reading a full 4-minute case with however many contentions and points throughout the full 4 minutes, you make a short but strong 2-minute case instead. Your introduction is very brief, something along the lines of, my partner and I negate the resolution previously stated by our opponents. You're saving as much time as you possibly can. You're reading brief impacts. You're reading your introduction that says we negate and moving straight into your first point. Brief impacts. Trying to get a full case, or at least close to a full case, in about 2 minutes time. And then you move, and the next 2 minutes of your first speech are actually attacking your opponent's case. Similar to how the negative speech in LD works, where they read their case and then have a couple minutes within the same speech to move and attack their opponents. That's what a flex case is, except it's typically in public forum. This is, I guess,
typically in Lincoln. Oh, the flex case is typically in public forum. I understand what you're saying now.
This point is specific to public forum because in LD and policy, it's all planned out ahead of time. Flex cases are interesting. It gives you an opportunity to create immediate clash and gives your opponent 6 minutes of attacks to respond to rather than 4. Or, whenever you read your 2 minutes case, it gives you 4 minutes of attacking their case split between the flex case and your second speaker's attacking speech, and then 4 minutes of defense between the rest of your second speaker's attacking speech and your rebuttal. is really interesting. You can choose to run attacks as extra contentions that you wrote while your opponents were giving their speech, or just attack like normal. Say, our speech is over, or our case is over, now let's move and look at my opponent's case. What are your thoughts on flex cases?
I like them sometimes. I think if you've hit a team multiple times and you've lost to that same team multiple times, if you're losing on speaks, or if you're losing on some basic argumentation stuff, maybe try running a flex case against them if you have the opportunity, because it's kind of like forcing someone to switch up their rhythm. You're changing the windows that they have available to respond to certain things, and you're changing the windows that you have available to present arguments as well as to attack their case. And really, it's just going to shake up the whole format for somebody who doesn't typically debate against flex cases, and it might be a good way to catch a team that you don't think you're going to win against off guard. Right,
and it's really interesting how people respond when, after the constructive speech, there's already a basis of attacks made. And I'm not talking about issues brought up in Crossfire, that kind of thing. I mean direct attacks. It's important.
Now I see why you wanted to talk about Crossfire after flex cases.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll move to it.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's really important with flex cases, typically to only run them if you know you have a flow judge or an experienced lay judge, somebody whose kids debated or a previous debater that's just not flowing, that kind of thing. You can do it with a lay judge, but it's not going to hit them the same way, I don't think.
Yeah, it's going to be confusing for them mostly, especially if it's their first time judging, because if they just watched a flight before yours or a round before yours with a couple flights and they all followed the same format, and then you guys come and break the mold, to them, I mean, no matter what, it's just going to seem wrong.
Right,
and
to a new judge.
They might just vote you down because you didn't do it the same as everybody else, and they may not understand the premise of what you're trying to accomplish.
Right, so you can, whenever you decide to, you can whenever you want to, but it's really going to have the best effects with a flow judge especially, or a good lay judge that at least knows how argumentation works and how debate flowing is supposed to work.
What I would highly recommend is, if you're going to run a flex case, have it available as your auxiliary option. Have a primary normal case on the same side that you would debate normally, as you always do, so that it's in your comfort zone, and have that flex case just ready to go. So if you end up in a round where you guys are on the side you like and you're going second and you think you got a good flow judge and you want to try it out, then pull it out then.
Yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah, and I think it was a good way for us to mix up the monotony.
Yeah, I would write an AF case and a neg case, pro and con, whatever. Normal, full 4 minutes for first speaker, if we were the first team. And then I would write flex cases for both sides, just in case we got into a situation where we were second and we wanted to run the flex case.
Plus, if you're from a smaller district, or if you're from a state where there just aren't that many schools involved in public forum yet, this is going to be a really good way for you to force different debates to happen, because I mean, even in Missouri, where it's a pretty well-developed circuit, we would debate the same teams regularly.
Yeah.
And when you have already won against a specific team at a prior tournament from the same topic, and you guys end up on the same sides, and you're just doing the same debate again, it almost seems kind of mechanical, like, oh, we've done this song and dance before, we know how it ends. But then you whip out that flex case, and all of a sudden it's new for them, it's new for you, the debate's exciting again, there's some interesting clash to hit.
Yes.
It's just really good. It's great academic value, it's great debate.
Yeah, it's a super interesting thing to do, and it turns what would just be another normal debate into something fun. Even if, a flex case really doesn't matter after, it doesn't change anything after the first speech, it sets a cool tone for the rest of the debate.
Do we have any questions regarding flex cases sent in, or was this just something you wanted to cover?
This is just something I wanted to talk about.
Understandable.
So, that being said, if you do have any questions about flex cases, feel free to email us. I love trying to help people.
And what's that email address?
candorbriefs@gmail.com or formerpartners@gmail.com, or hit us up on Twitter at either of those handles.
I like
pretty easy stuff to remember, hopefully.
I
just
say it
realized
every
I've
week.
been wearing these headphones.
Oh, yeah?
For like 10 minutes. I was like, why can't I hear him?
I know I say it every week, but I love that our social media handles line up across platforms. It's so convenient. we don't have a million
I
different...
hate when it doesn't.
Yeah.
You know?
Someone's like, follow me on Twitter at I love debate, and then hit me up on Facebook at debate is love, and then on Reddit at love life debate life 1214, and you're like, this is not convenient at all as somebody who's trying to consume this media. So if you like the fact that we have similar tags and handles across our different social media platforms, comment the word nice down below.
If you're watching on YouTube or listening. The next thing we want to talk about is evidence condensation.
This is not when you're sweating really bad and you're holding your evidence and it's getting wet.
And
that is evidence perspiration.
Right.
And we'll be covering that in the super advanced public forum episode. This is evidence condensation, and it is
condensing evidence.
Yeah, it's what I broke myself to do in debate. It's
same.
Probably the best way to operate as a second speaker to fit in the most amount of content. And essentially it's just paraphrasing evidence, which is 100% legal. There is nothing in the rules that says you can't just give the citation, give the date, or I guess that's included in the citation. There's nothing that says you can't just give the citation from a piece of evidence and then totally explain what the author's trying to convey in your own words.
Right.
The only time it becomes an issue is if you misrepresent the evidence, if you power tag the evidence,
right,
or if you just, well, I think that pretty much covers it.
Yeah, I mean, don't misrepresent what the evidence says. Don't try to explain further as the author. Say what the author is saying, explain it, and then give your own take on it. A lot of people run into issues with time management by reading full cards verbatim.
And if you're a second speaker and you're doing your attacking speech and they have 3 contentions with 2 subpoints on each, so they effectively have 6 points that you need to cover, you're not going to be able to read a full paragraph or a full 2 paragraphs in response to each of those and maintain a good cadence that isn't just going to be policy sprint.
Right. So what you do is you write on your flow the author, the date, and then just key points that they bring up.
100%.
Statistics, the points that they're bringing up, just key stuff, and just paraphrase it. Say Johnson 2016 says that 25% of people do this, or whatever it is, or want this.
At this point in the year or in your debate career, as a second speaker especially, but really both sides of the partnership, you need to know your evidence. I can't stress it enough. You, as a second speaker especially, should just be a sponge, a encyclopedia of knowledge about whatever topic that you have. Because if you do that, if you diversify all of the information available on a topic, even if it's just reading through all of the free evidence packets that are released and remembering as much as you can, you're going to have beautiful mind epiphany moments during debates, where someone's going to say 1 or 2 keywords, and just like a Google search engine, you're going to pop out a page number in your brain, and you're going to be able to go find that piece of evidence. And because you've mastered the art of paraphrasing now, thanks to our wonderful little podcast, you're going to be able to get that evidence out in any amount of time, and it's going to be so useful.
And just one thing, just a debate thing, not necessarily, it's not a strategy that only really good people have. It's just part of debate is just learning the evidence. And one thing that I started doing whenever Lucas and I debated was, after a few practice rounds or after a tournament, I would make a file for both pro and con that was just staple cards that we knew were going to be used every single round. And I would have them in a separate document, and I would have that printed out, because we were paperless. So we had a printed copy of our case and then a printed copy of that evidence, just because we knew every single round it was going to come up and the opponents were going to ask for it. So we had staple card docs, and we knew them by heart. And it let us just, in a crossfire, bring it up. We didn't have to look at it to quote it in a speech. We knew the citation, we knew what the evidence said. It's so crucial.
And if you find yourself encountering issues with remembering the sheer volume of information that's going to be associated with a lot of these topics, get good? No, I'm just kidding. Probably flashcards would be a good start. And even something as simple as just the citation and the key numbers that's on it. So if it's the Saudi Arabia topic like it is right now, Brooks 2019 from the Brookings Institute, and if it's about the sale of arms in Saudi Arabia causing a 40% boom in their economy, then write down 40% economy boom on the card. And then you do that for every piece of evidence you need, and you have flashcards, and you go through those until you feel pretty comfortable with just remembering it on the spot.
Right. And I wish there was something that we did that helped us get it. It just happened.
Yeah, what helped us get it, and this isn't like a natural talent, we stepped into the shoes and they just fit perfectly. This isn't a Cinderella story. This is more of a, we just got it from doing so many rounds.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if every state has this, but Missouri has a 10 tournament limit minus
Districts.
state and district.
Districts and state
and nationals.
Yeah.
We would always max out because it just gave us the most amount of experience, and that was the only thing that we knew would for sure would help make us better. So
we would debate at least once every class period in the week or two leading up to a tournament. We would stay after school. If we had a free class period, we would meet up. We would, on weekends, if we didn't have a tournament, we would meet up at the library or somebody's house. It's just all about practice.
And I know some of you may not be fortunate enough to go to a school that actually has debate as an allocated class that you can take during school hours. And that is a pretty big hindrance in your education. However, it doesn't stop this from being a possibility. If you're truly dedicated and you find other people who are truly dedicated in this activity, they don't even have to be from your school. They can be debaters from other places. You guys can get together, host an underground debate tournament, and just debate for practice all the time.
Round robin, yeah. So
we used to Skype debate, okay?
Yeah. So getting back into evidence condensation, what makes it so important is one, time management. You don't have to waste all of your time reading cards verbatim. But reading evidence like a book to your judge isn't nearly as effective as looking your judge in the eyes and explaining what the card says.
It comes across conversationally. It's almost, when you reference Brooks from the Brookings Institute in 2019, but you do it in a paraphrase style, it's almost like you're talking about this guy Brooks that you went and talked to about this topic last week, and he gave you the rundown on it.
Right.
And it seems like you have a really good grasp of the topic when you approach it this way through paraphrasing the evidence. And you do have a good grasp of the topic if you approach it the way of paraphrasing the evidence, and you're doing it without misrepresenting the arguments.
Right. And so that along with the time management, which is, obviously this is great for second speakers, but also for first speakers, rebuttals are difficult. Having 2 minutes to respond to 4 minutes of attacks. This is key, especially if you're responding with evidence. You read one card and that's a third of your speech time. That gives you no time for impacts on everything. That gives you no time for wrapping it up. And I always read rebuttals pretty fast. That was something that I really had to work on. But evidence condensation, just whenever we learned to do this, it was just something clicked and it started working really well. Would you agree?
Yes, I would agree. Not to downplay the value of evidence perspiration. A little bit of sweat can really show your passion, but don't get swampy with it.
Hey, I say get as swampy as you want. You're wearing probably an undershirt, a couple shirts, and a jacket. Sweat. Do it. Do some push-ups. Who cares? Wear deodorant.
Excuse me.
Hygiene is important.
Hygiene is important. Please wear deodorant. Your teammates will thank you. With that being said, I think we've pretty well covered the basis of evidence condensation and what we believe to be its significance in public forum debate as well as debate in general.
And that thing, evidence condensation, that may be common. It just wasn't around here.
Yeah, it really may be the normal style in other places, and honestly, that would be something that we're curious to know. So if you're from New York or California or from anywhere that's not Missouri, let us know in the comments or shoot us an email or something. Just kind of give us a rundown on stylistically how most teams approach public forum in your region.
What is the meta on reading evidence?
Because I am curious.
And again, this evidence condensation will work in any debate type.
You might find it to be less effective in policy on occasion because there is a certain value to reading the evidence verbatim. I believe that it's required with certain parts.
But LD in public forum, definitely, this is possible and
it's
legal. Huge, yeah. So the next thing that we wanted to talk about was turns, and that's such a vague thing. But turns are defense. Turns are changing the opponent's claims to either not apply to you or to apply to something beneficial to you. It's a vague term, and under this there's a couple different things. There's link turns and impact turns.
Yeah, so I hate the word link turn, like the terminology for it. I don't know why we had to come up with a special little name for just defending a point. But all a link turn is my opponents say our plan leads to nuclear war. This is why our plan does not lead to nuclear war. Insert good evidence about why it doesn't lead to nuclear war here.
Right, it's a block.
It's a block, yeah. I don't like to just cut a link turn. There's no turn involved, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, like I said, the turn comes from, it would actually be saying, my opponents say our plan leads to nuke war. This is why our plan does not lead to nuke war. It leads to these benefits.
Yeah, the turn comes back to tying it into your own impacts that already exist in your case. I understand that, but to me that's still not a turn. That's just showing that what you said is still true and blocking their argument. So you could just call it a block.
Yeah, and in public forum, the term turn, link turn, impact turn, double turn, that kind of thing is technically specific to policy, but these exist
universally.
Right. This is just argumentation.
Fair enough. So yeah, link turn is one of the 3 different kinds of turns we're going to be discussing, or 4 different kinds of turns technically, and it's just a block.
Yeah,
really
that's
easy,
an answer too.
Straightforward. Yeah, they said this isn't true, and this is why.
The other type of well-known turn is the impact turn, which is essentially my opponents say our plan leads to nuke war, and this is bad. Here's why nuke war is actually good. So you agree to the link itself, but you turn the impact, saying that whatever the impact is actually beneficial.
Is this the part where I read an American exceptionalism critique?
I don't even want to talk to you right now. Now, link turns and impact turns individually are great. They do their job. You either break the link or you break the impact. A double turn is when you do both of these, and a double turn is not a good thing. A double turn would be, my opponents say our plan leads to nuke war, and this is bad. Our plan does not lead to nuke war. Also, nuke war is good. Congratulations, you just argued that your plan makes a good thing not happen.
And not only a good thing doesn't happen, but it's a good thing that you've already probably committed to putting in your case.
Right.
In some way or another. So you're not only bringing up that topic area, but you've given your opponents ammunition to show that you don't accomplish that goal.
Right. You weren't just conceding their argument. You made the argument that your plan prevents a good thing, and you say this is a good thing, and then you say your plan prevents it. That's a double turn. Don't do that. Read either link or impact turns.
Alternatively, you can totally do a double turn as long as you preface it correctly.
Right. This is what I did this nonstop in rebuttals, responding to attacks. What I call a double turn with a preface is double turning, but inserting a little bit into it. So a double turn with a preface would be something like, my opponents say our plan leads to nuke war, and this is bad. Actually, our plan does not lead to nuke war, but even if it did, nuke war is good. So just that part where I said, but even if it did, that is the preface. Now you've link turned and added a preface to the impact turn, covering all the bases. You break the link, but then you say just ahead of time, even if they prove the link, then you do impact turn. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think it's the most solid form of defense in public forum, because not only are you showing that the line of argumentation doesn't apply to your contention or your point or whatever you're calling it.
Yeah.
But you're also showing that the line of argumentation that they're going down doesn't lead anywhere that's going to benefit them.
Right. So you're doing a block, and then before they even have a chance to respond to the block, you're blocking the response.
Yeah, you're just showing that this whole train of thought they're trying to bring up is almost atopical, but not quite. It's just not anything we need to bother with.
Right. You're putting a wall of defense up by turning the link and then ahead of time turning the impact without doing a double turn. I hope that makes sense. If there's more questions on how to do this, let us know.
Yeah, this is again why I don't like the fact that it's called a turn, because it puts these ideas of things going one way and then going another way into your heads, but really it's not anything to do with that. It's just argumentation impacts and argumentation links, and a double turn is you saying, hey, that impact that they're saying is bad is not actually bad, but
it doesn't happen.
It also doesn't happen. And even if it did, it's not actually bad. So who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of did it out of order there, but yeah. Who cares?
So moving on from turns, I hope we covered that well enough. Do a link turn, do an impact turn. Don't do a double turn unless you preface it. Now, I do want to say that a double turn with a preface, don't do a double turn unless you have a preface. I do want to say that double turns with a preface might not be great in policy, just because of how tight policy is on things like this.
If you're a policy debater by trade and you don't really do any other kinds of debate, you should take everything that we talk about in the podcast with a grain of salt. We were not policy debaters, and this is primarily intended as a tool for public forum and kind of for LD, but mostly public forum. We're not trying to leave you guys out. We just don't have the expertise we need to right now to properly discuss policy. That may come in the future.
Right. We're working on some future things. And we do have an understanding of policy, just not to the
Quentin has an understanding of policy. I do not.
Okay. I have an understanding of policy, just not to the level that I wish I did or we did enough to talk about it that much. So we have plans for that kind of thing in the future. Just stay hanging if you're interested. So the next thing we want to talk about is crossfire strategies.
Oh, wait. Hold on. Before we move to crossfire strategies, I wanted to touch on something. We have a question that came to us from our Reddit page.
Yeah. Well, not our Reddit page.
Well,
just from Reddit.
From Reddit, rather. It is. I guess that's not how Reddit works, is it?
Yeah, no.
Showing my internet knowledge more and more every day.
You're so old.
Ostracize me in the comments. I can't wait. It was from a coach who was asking a question about collapsing arguments. Essentially, he was saying, or they, rather, not to assume the gender, were saying that their students were struggling with when there's a lot of arguments on the board in public forum. Like, let's say you maybe have 6 or 7 lines of argumentation going on both sides of the debate. How do they know which arguments to pick and run with? Because at a certain point, realistically, you're going to have to drop some stuff.
Yeah, speech times get cut in half halfway through the debate.
Yeah, there's just no way to cover all of it every time.
Right.
That should be happening before you even get into the round. You should already know what 2 or 3 big points, big voting issues that you're going to collapse on before you even enter the round. And that's something that you could work on with your partner. I refer to it as crystallization. It can also be referred to as collapsing. You're going to have those 2 to 3 voting issues that are kingpin to your case, to proving your side and being strong things that the judge is probably going to sympathize with, or that they're just going to agree with because they're good arguments.
And I was going to say, from a case writer point of view, these arguments that you want to collapse on are going to be the ones that you wrote with the biggest impacts possible.
Exactly. And this kind of collapse is going to start occurring in your case read. You're going to know from the get-go, if you do it right, or do it this way rather, not correct, that your partner and yourself have agreed on these 2 to 3 arguments as being your collapse points.
Right.
If anything comes up besides these 3 things, we're going to do our best on it. But at the end of the day, we'll drop those and we're going to stick to our guns here. And those are your voting issues. And if you're having trouble picking those out of the round, I would say it's only because you haven't already selected them before going into the round.
Right. If you have to choose between off-case arguments and your case arguments, always choose your case arguments.
The only time that you can make an exception to that rule, and again, use your best judgment, is if they make an off-case argument that, I don't know, permutates your entire side to their side somehow in public forum, right. Which it happens occasionally.
Yeah. I mean, just in debate in general, these things happen. Public forum, LD, policy especially, where they can sort of take everything you're saying to their side. If that occurs, it's a sketchy situation. If there's not a way that you can really just fall back on your case, I would take impacts.
Yeah, do some impact calculus. And by impact calculus, we literally just mean what things in the debate that have been discussed that we won on are going to affect the largest amount of people.
Right.
And how do I convey that it's going to affect the largest amount of people?
Right.
So if one of the largest points, like in the Saudi Arabia topic, is that the U.S. supply of arms to Saudi Arabia is causing the conflict in Yemen to escalate.
Right.
And that's like a very large point in your case, and then they end up flipping it, right, or turning it right there at the end, and you can't get it back. Just do some impact calculus about the lives saved by Saudi Arabia ever having these arms in the first place versus the lives saved or lost due to the Yemen conflict currently. And if you can show that us arming Saudi Arabia up until this point has saved more lives than it's lost in the Yemen conflict, technically you win that point. Yeah, it's like a cold cut and calculated way to look at human life, and it's not necessarily correct, or morally right rather, but it is a way to win that argument.
Right.
And to take your argument back.
So I would say overall, when you're at the point in the round where you have to collapse on some arguments, one, don't collapse on arguments that aren't really solid.
Yeah.
You don't want to make the biggest points that you say, Judge, these are what we're talking about. The ones that you're sort of losing. You know? You want to collapse on the strong points of your case that you've been talking about from the first minute of the debate.
100%. And second speakers, we talked about this briefly in the intro to Public Forum episode, but when I refer to crystallization and I refer to bringing in your voting points, that should, again, be being done in your first speech, in your attacking speech. You should be finding a way to tie the fact that you're defeating their contentions back to your own voting issues and showing why your voting issues not only cause a higher impact, like a higher positive impact, but also that maybe they even negate their contentions further. And just keep playing off of your own case. Keep bringing up your own same voting issues. And when I say voting issues, I guess maybe that's too vague even. Your contentions are basically going to be your voting issues. If you're building your case in the way that we're discussing, contentions 1, 2, and 3 can all have unique impacts that can all be considered voting issues if you build your case that way.
Yeah. Yep. So I would say that's baseline when collapsing impacts voting issues figured out ASAP.
Now, if you're in a round that goes totally off the rails and there's like 25 lines of argumentation or something stupid like that, you're just going to have to do your best to do some quick impact calculus, pick the ones you've won. Out of the ones that you've won, pick the 2 to 3 that, again, have the highest amount of effect to the largest amount of people that you would consider to be good, and run with those. Yep. And that's really all you can do. This is going to kind of fall into the same area as evidence condensation.
You're right.
And by that I mean the only way to get good at this is just by doing it a lot. Just do lots of practice rounds and keep in your mind before going in, I need to really focus on my collapsing. I really need to focus on my crystallization, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. So now that we've talked about that, let's actually move into crossfire strategies.
Yeah, crossfire strategies. Quentin, in crossfire and public forum, what would you say are some pretty standard jobs for a first speaker, or rather just some good approaches for a first speaker?
Well, I'm just going to get in the headspace of I just gave a speech and I'm going into Crossfire. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the other first speaker for a copy of their case. They have to say yes. I give it to you, Lucas, my second speaker, to just start looking over it and finding breaks in it. From there, you have a choice. And you have a lot more choices than this, but these were the two I always went for. You have good cop or bad cop. I always typically went good cop and let Lucas be bad cop in his speeches because I had a baby face and I was able to just be good cop, sweet, polite.
Well, and I love to speak with biblical sincerity. I like to try to make it sound like our opponent's case is going to cause fire and brimstone to return to the world, and that the only logical vote for any true Christian would be to vote for our side. And I know that I'm opening a can of worms and biting into 35 different fallacies describing it this way, but that's just how we did it.
The tone.
Yeah, that's how I set my tone. Is what I kind of think of it as dire sincerity. Yeah. You're being totally and completely honest with the judge, but you're conveying it in a tone that is grim and dire to make them understand that you're being serious. This is something that has to happen. You need to vote for us because if you don't, something bad's going to happen.
Yeah, that was our tone. But in general, whenever I had to, at least whenever it was one-on-one first speaker crossfire, things changed in the grand crossfire. Mm-hmm. But at least one-on-one first speaker crossfire, I was good cop. I was pretty passive. I was polite. I answered questions and only asked questions when they yielded. Or if they were being super aggressive, I would almost play wounded to the judge. I would almost act like I was getting annoyed and
taken aback rather than annoyed. More like, you seeing this? I can't even get a word in edgewise, so I'm not going to be rude and try to do it anyway. I just want you to be aware of the fact that what's happening.
Right. I would do it politely.
Yep.
I would start to say something, and then I would just stop and sort of
let them cut you off.
Right. To show the judge, hey, look at this. And then eventually I would have a moment of standing up for myself, and the judge would be proud, and I would ask a question. But generally, I would only ask questions when they yielded. The goal with good cop is to always come off polite, calm, well-versed. It really has the goal of making the opponent seem too overbearing.
Or even, it might even make your opponent seem frantic, or perhaps as though they care more about winning the round than they do about the educational value of the debate, which I know everybody wants to win the round. We all want shiny, don't get me wrong, but you're only going to win rounds if you make people believe that the reason you're there is for the educational value of the activity.
Right. So on the other side of good cop is bad cop. Bad cop, which I would do sometimes. Honestly, if I was debating somebody that I knew was cocky and I knew I could fluster them if I wanted to, I would play bad cop. Very aggressive, very dominant. Push them always for better answers. Ask them a question. When you get the answer, ask them for a better answer. You know, call them out on anything and everything that I could find.
So whenever they would make a new line of argumentation in the little crossfire, he would hit them immediately with a, well, do you have some evidence for that? Or is that just your own words?
Or is there a question with this? That kind of thing. The goal with bad cop is to dominate the crossfire and create immediate doubt for the judge in the opponent's thought process and their ability to actually formulate arguments. Right?
Yeah.
That makes some sense. Another good thing, whether good cop or bad cop, first speaker crossfire, ask the opponents to explain whatever point it is, whatever argument it is. Ask them to explain it in their own words. Don't look at your case. Don't read your evidence. Explain to me what this says in your own words. Because that lets them stumble. It shows the judge, one, whenever you explain something simply in your own words, it has the ability to take out all the big words in the meaningful words, and whenever it's set just in layman's terms, it kind of takes some of the impact away.
And secondarily, if I'm sitting there and I'm listening and I'm poring over every single word that the first speakers are saying in Crossfire as the second speaker, and then I hear Quentin ask that question, I'm immediately going to tune in even more, because as they're explaining their point in their own words, this is going to be our chance to identify any gaps in logic that they might have in their argumentation. The case itself or the evidence itself may have the full link. It may have the A to B to C to D that gives them the impact they need. But you may find in asking these types of questions, explain your own point, explain your contention one in your own words, that the opponents don't understand how they're getting from B to C or from C to D. And if you can notice that, you can prey on it, and you can force them to admit essentially that they don't understand their own arguments. And that's huge.
Or at least stumble and fluster on it in front of the judge to see that they don't get what they're saying.
Now, that doesn't mean you're going to win that argument by default. It might still be a very well-constructed piece of evidence that defeats your side. However, it's going to cast doubt, and every point of doubt you can cast is another chance that you might win.
Right. So, Lucas, whenever you go into your Crossfire, you and your opponent have just given your attacking speeches. What do you do when you go into Crossfire?
I clear my mind of everything but fine dining and breathing. No, I'm just kidding. Because then, oh baby, we'll forget the name.
What?
It's a SpongeBob reference, man.
Oh my god.
Do you remember what episode that is?
I honestly can't remember the last time I watched SpongeBob.
It's when they turn the Krusty Krab into the super fine dining establishment.
Oh,
Also,
yeah.
Rip, creator of SpongeBob. Butch Hartman?
I don't know.
I think. I don't know. I could be getting that wrong.
R.I.P. Let's take a moment of silence.
All right.
Thank you.
Now, back to the question Quentin just asked me about second speakers working, or where's my mind at as I'm going into Crossfire?
Yeah, what are your goals? What are your strategies? What do you do?
I'm trying to get through it, honestly.
Yeah. You don't like Crossfire.
I hate Crossfire. I think it serves very little value beyond clarification in debate. I think that all Crossfires could be 1 minute, and that would be sufficient to ask very basic questions about taglines and about acquiring evidence so that you guys don't have to use prep time for that crappy stuff. But if I had to have goals other than just getting through the Crossfire as fast as possible and thinking about my final focus, I'm going to be trying to work my voting issues back into my answers. And this is kind of going back to the collapsing I was talking about earlier. By the end of your attacking speech, you and your partner should have already both hit your voting issues in some way or another. You may not have called them your voting issues yet. You may not have even really emphasized to the judge that these were going to be your big points for the round yet, but you should have already both covered them, because that means those two same things have come up twice at this point.
Yeah.
So then if they ask you the right question in Crossfire and you have the chance to work that impact back into your answer, do it, because then you hit your voting issue for a third time already. And it's only the 4 speeches in out of 8. Yeah. You're halfway through the round and you've already met the rule of 3s.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. That's a very good
rule.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And
if you don't know what the rule of 3s is people generally remember things in 3s. So if you have the chance to do it exactly this way, you need to tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them.
Yep.
And
I love that.
It's as simple as that.
A lot of what your Crossfires came down to was really just you standing there answering questions and me handing you pieces of paper with questions to ask.
Yeah, this is another thing. Your first speaker is going to have the rebuttal coming up after your attacking speech, whether you're first or second, it's happening after that. And there might be some things that have come up in the attacking speeches that your partner wants you to cover that you don't know that they want you to cover, because you've gone straight from your speech into Crossfire. You haven't even sat down yet, most likely, especially if you're the second speaker or in the round. If you guys are going second, obviously you're the second speaker.
Yeah.
This is something we touched on in our intro to public forum video as well, but sticky notes. Have some sticky notes ready, both of you, and any time that you're up giving a speech, if you have something you want your partner to cover, develop a shorthand system together, just get familiar with each other's writing styles, whatever it takes, write the question quickly, hand it to them, and if you guys have the chemistry you need and the synergy you need to do it right, they'll be able to work that in for you.
Yeah. All the time, if the attacking speech just happened and I'm writing my rebuttal during the second speaker crossfire, I'm wondering, what did he mean with this? Can I see this piece of evidence?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to write it down on a piece of paper or sticky note, hand it to Lucas, and he's going to ask, and I'm going to have my answer immediately. Because I'm trying not to use prep time if I don't have to, and I'm trying to get all the answers I need during the second speaker crossfire so that I'm ready to just get up and give my speech.
Also, earlier when we were talking about evidence condensation, it's very applicable to crossfire, because this can be your chance to be the wonderful, beautiful Google search engine that I want all the second speakers to be. This can be your chance to, anytime they ask you a question about any of your contentions, you can be like, oh, do you mean our Brookings and from the Brookings Institute card in 2019? Yeah, this is what they said. And what was your question about it again? And that's a little bit of filler for you to think of a better answer, you know? And then you go on from there. Or when they ask you a question about a card you read in reference to their second contention, you've already gone through the flashcards so many times, you know it. You dream about it. And so you just throw it back out, the same citation, the same way. But at this time, you're not even looking at your paper. Yeah. And it's just impressive. It shows a certain amount of discipline in the activity that not all teams strive to reach.
Right.
Furthermore, it's a good chance to, just like in the first speaker crossfire, how I would hone in whenever Quentin would ask those clarification questions. Could you explain your, first contention in your own words, not reading from the paper? This is a good chance for you to ask the same kinds of questions. Can you explain your attack on our first contention in your own words? And since you're already up there, you might even be able to call them out on the missing links in their arguments right there.
Yeah.
You might be able to be like, oh, well, I see how your evidence makes the jump from B to C, but what you just explained to me about how this evidence functions doesn't seem to apply to that. So are you arguing something different, or is your evidence arguing something different? And they might even, your opponent might even be on the same page as the evidence. They just may not understand the argument, so it doesn't sound like they are, and you can capitalize on that.
Yeah.
And that isn't dirty. That's their fault. Showing that doesn't make you a dirty, scummy, sleazy debater. It just shows that they have the opportunity to do the same thing for you, but because you've practiced on paraphrasing your evidence and condensation of evidence so well, when they turn around and try to do the same thing to you, it's not going to work, because you're going to hit them with those Google search engine like results, like you just know the evidence like the back of your hand. You're going to be able to show your links A, B, C, D to your impact really clearly and concisely in the middle of crossfire without looking at any notes, and it's just going to look awesome for you guys. It's going to get you a lot of ones in your rounds, honestly.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I don't know if there's a lot else that you can do in crossfire. I don't see much purpose beyond points of clarification, working your voting issues into your question answers, and giving your partner opportunities to hand you notes for other points of clarification.
Yeah. So, Grand Crossfire.
Totally worthless.
Totally worthless.
Can't stand it. It's just a 3-minute buffer, so I have more time to write my final focus.
Yeah, it really is. The main goal of the Grand Crossfire is, one, it's last minute clarification on anything and everything that's been brought up. It's the last real chance for, quote, new arguments, because you can't really make arguments in Crossfire, but it's your last opportunity to bring up any new line or any break-off line of argumentation, and a different type of attack, or turning a little bit.
Yeah, this is where you're going to ask that loaded question type thing, where it was, you said a lot of great things about your second contention, but are you aware that Stevens from the Stevens Institute in 2019 actually said this about it? And what do you have to say to that in response? And that's how you can work up a new argument last minute in Grand Crossfire. Again, people might say it's dirty, people might say it's sleazy, but it's within the rules. They have the same opportunities to play the game the exact same way that you do.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's also a good opportunity for the first speaker to extend their rebuttals. If something gets brought up that's even remotely related to something that was brought up in the rebuttal speech, maybe you didn't have enough time in your rebuttal. Here's your answer, or here's your chance.
They're almost definitely going to, if we have 3 contentions and Quentin was only able to cover contentions 1 and 2 in his rebuttal, if they ask that beautiful question of, we noticed you didn't have a response to our third contention, so does that mean that we win that point? that's Quentin's chance to jump in and be like, actually, no, I did have something to say, but I didn't have time to get to it. I'm glad you brought this up because actually it's this.
I say something along the lines of, due to time, I wasn't able to get to it, but based on the attack you made, this is the issue with that. And then there you go. It's on the flow.
Yeah, and at that point, then you can float across as the second speaker in your final focus.
Right.
Grand Crossfire, like we said, second speaker, don't even worry about jumping in that much except for to show more of your beautiful mind.
Yeah.
Google search type responses. Mostly focus on writing your final focus because it's arguably the most important speech in the round.
Yeah, it can be. I'd say the first and last speech are most important.
First impression, last impression, because it's the most likely that people are going to remember it.
That being said, typically, if you have the chance or if you have the ability, let the first speaker just carry the Grand Cross, because the first speaker's done. I don't have any more speeches to write. I'm going to sit back and listen to final focuses and start packing up my evidence. Not actually. Never start packing your stuff up until the debate is totally finished.
Yeah, it's very unprofessional, and honestly, it's kind of rude because I have to listen to you shuffling papers into your file folders and clicking your tubs and whatnot as I'm giving my final speech about why we won the round.
And the judge might want to see something that you just put away. So don't put stuff up until the debate is totally finished. But anyway, yeah, my job as first speaker is done. I've read the case. I've gone through every crossfire. I've given my rebuttal. Now I'm just listening to the final focuses. And that's why I'm totally allowed to just take Grand Crossfire and let Lucas write his final focus, let him work on what arguments he's going to collapse into. This is a little bit out, but we're pretty much done talking about Crossfire. Whenever you are writing your final focus or your summary, whatever you want to call it, how do you focus on time management? I mean, you've got 2 minutes and probably 3 points. What?
I just did it.
You just did?
Yeah. I was fortunate enough that oftentimes whatever amount of information I chose to put into the speech just happened to be about the right amount of information I needed to fill the time without going over excessively.
You would watch time and you would know, I have this many points, I've covered this many, I have this amount of time left.
Yeah, I would meter myself. I would skip things if I felt like I wasn't going to have the time. Really.
And it comes back into evidence condensation, because you didn't read evidence in your final focus. Your final focus was totally freeform. It was just a speech. It wasn't reading any evidence. It was just touching on things in your own words.
The final focus is where I would tap into the largest amount of that grim sincerity that I was talking about. I would make the judge, if I could, feel like the United States president and like they were about to sign a law on either affirmative or negative.
Or turn the newt key kind of thing.
Exactly, and
you wouldn't even take your flow up there.
No, I didn't take anything with me to the podium.
Yeah, you would take your phone for time. But.
Yeah, like I was just lucky enough to have been blessed, I guess, with a natural tempo to my speech that was acceptable to the ear, but also fast enough to cover anything I ever really needed to cover. If you find yourself struggling with this, and you have access to a speech coach, talk to your speech coach about nailing your words per minute. There is an ideal words per minute for speaking. I think it's anything between like 120 and 180 is roughly, is pretty listenable.
Yeah.
But you want to stay closer to 120 for people to really absorb what you're saying. And you're thinking to yourself right now, Lucas, I have no idea how many words I say in a minute. And I'm saying, yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah. And one weird thing that I did, at least whenever I would practice case reading, I would get a metronome and I would turn on a metronome while I spoke, and every word or syllable would be on a beat so that I could just,
That's important. That actually helps with your information staying with the judge. And that's when I literally said the word tempo, not a few seconds ago. That's kind of what I was referring to as well.
And it gave me the ability to, and I know it's different because the case was the same every time, but it gave me the ability to, whenever I got up there to give a speech, I was just singing along to a song that I've sung 10 or 15 times in the last week.
Yes, it makes it very natural and very organic.
And that's how, do you remember there were some, like, in out rounds when a bunch of people were watching and everybody was timing and case read would be happening and I would say thank you and then like 12 alarms would go off and it was so cool. I always felt so cool.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing to be able to monitor your tempo of your speech to that level of accuracy. Obviously, not everybody's going to be able to do it right away. Not everybody's even going to be able to do it. If you find yourself struggling with this endlessly after working with your speech coach, after practicing with a metronome, don't beat yourself up about it. Again, it's still just an activity that you're doing for fun and for the educational value associated with it. However, invest your energy in other places.
Yeah.
If you're finding that you can't nail one part of debate, do the Einstein thing. Go work on something else that's really mundane and hope that an epiphany just comes to you while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Einstein literally got a job at the patent office because he knew that it was so boring and so repetitive that he could sit and think about his other work while he was doing it there, and he would just randomly have breakthroughs. And that's how relativity came to be.
Yeah.
Or the theory of general relativity, rather.
Even more important, I think, is just have fun with what you're doing.
Yeah, have fun.
If you're not, I mean, I don't care if you're not doing well, personally, as long as you're having a good time.
If you don't hate yourself by the time you're done, you're not doing it right.
That's kind of how I feel, dude.
I'm just kidding. You should not hate yourself. Self-hate isn't actually a good thing. That was a joke.
A dark joke.
Debate coaches, I'm sorry if you didn't like that. I'm so sorry. Please don't stop your kids from listening to us. I need to be able to eat lunch.
Yeah, me too. I'm hungry. So,
with
moving
that, I think we pretty well covered
crossfires
and some responsibilities of both sides
there.
But I have a question for you, Quentin.
What is your question for me, Lucas?
All the stuff you just covered, if I'm doing the traditional flow format, I feel like I'm going to have a hard time keeping track of links and link turns and stuff.
Right.
Is there another way that I can flow?
Yeah.
That's going to help me out?
Yeah. We never had a name for it. I've always called it just freeform flowing.
Are you talking about the vertical flowing that we used to do?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I think it started one time when one of the policy kids, we were doing a practice debate, and I needed flow paper. One of the policy kids gave me that extended printer paper.
Oh, the like 13-inch sheets?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it is.
A normal paper is 9x11, so
it's like
it's
1.25.
9x13.
Yeah, it's just like, it's a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
Not much. I think it was Austin Bennell. I think he gave me, it was blue. It was light blue. It was
I don't think
cool.
you can say his name without his permission on this.
It was Austin B.
Okay, that's
I'm
fine.
going to forget to cut that out.
That's okay.
I don't care.
He won't sue us, probably.
You don't care. I hope. He gave me extended blue printer paper. And I was like, wow, this is way too long to flow sideways. So I just left it vertical. Just like you normally would if you were using for anything other than flow. And what I did was I wrote my case using most of the paper and then just left a little section at the bottom to write down their case, just so I had their points, right? So I had a vertical flow going, and then I wouldn't do boxes. I wouldn't do blocks or anything in there. It was just lines coming off of points. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'll do my best to put up a picture of what I'm talking about, an example of the kind of flow I'm talking about. But there's no boxes. It's not no boxes or blocks. It's not very tight. It's not super organized. It's just flown out so that I can read down the page as I go. And it's visually, it makes sense.
I agree. Once Quentin introduced me to, his version of free-form flowing, it really stuck for me and hit a chord. It was perfect for keeping track of the opponent's case and flowing 4 to 5 steps of argumentation of, our rebuttal, their rebuttal, our rebuttal, their rebuttal.
Right. I think because when you flow normal flowing style, or what I call normal flowing style, turn it sideways, make the boxes and the blocks, you don't have enough downward space. So if you're doing like 4 arguments or 3 or 4 arguments, you're having to either not write down everything you want to do, or you're writing small, or you just don't have enough space. So turning it vertically, you can write as much as you want, just freeform it, piece it together however you want to, and then you have enough space for your points on the left, attacks in the middle, responses on the right.
Highly recommend the extended paper. It's not even that expensive to get a full ream of it, and a ream will last you a whole year.
Yeah.
And you can get it at pretty much all Walmarts. So Walmart.
Yeah, maybe like 10 or 15 bucks for extended.
Yeah, I'd say it was like 15 bucks for a ream. If you're having trouble affording that, I'm sure you could go to your coach or to your school activity budget director, and they can give you guys an allowance for paper or something.
Paper. Yeah,
they can figure it out. The school may even have extended legal paper available.
Yeah, it's great. It was a small change, but we noticed almost immediate results in our ability to just keep track of everything going on.
That being said, the fact that we call it freeform should be indicative to you guys that there wasn't a specific way we would approach it in any given round. It was literally just longer paper turned vertically without boxes, and it just freed up our thinking, and it freed up our flow, literally the ability to flow on the paper.
Yeah, I think having blocks and boxes sort of confines you to having a certain number of arguments you can make, or a certain amount of information that you can flow.
But then we turned around and we decided to think outside the box.
Outside the blocks.
The blockses. Can that be the discount code for today?
Blockses?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
We'll figure it out in a minute. So that's freeform flowing. I would urge you to try it. If it doesn't work for you, don't do it. Don't force yourself to. We only did it because we tried it and instantly liked it, and it made sense for us. If it doesn't make sense for you, who cares?
Just something simple, not simple, but something extra for this is that it might work for some, like he just said, it might work for some people, it might not work for others. Humans, by default, have logarithmic brains. We think in more of a monkey see, monkey do type way from birth, and we are conditioned via public education, specifically in the United States, to think arithmetically. Rather than monkey see, monkey do, it's why does monkey see, why does monkey do, how does monkey get from point A to point B? And that's where you're able to derive argumentation and things such as that. And the arithmetic thinking is good, but I think that flowing in this free way that's a little bit more logarithmic, maybe, is a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
Allows your brain that extra room to move around, and maybe will even allow you to see some links between arguments that you wouldn't have saw if you'd stuck them in these little boxes and only stuck to the next box for your response.
Right, and part of it is also just that there's literally flowing vertically makes things not so clustered together that you can read everything, and it's less overwhelming looking at your flow.
Don't be afraid to use the back of your paper either.
Yeah. You always wrote your final, like whenever you were going to write a final focus.
I didn't ever write my final focus.
Well, you would just, I wouldn't see, I remember Grand Crossfire would be done. I'm going to set the stage here. Grand Crossfire is done. I say, Lucas, are you good? And depending, we would maybe use a couple seconds of prep time. But before he walked up there, he would grab his paper, he would flip it over, he would grab his pen, and on the back side of the page, completely blank, he would write FF with a line, and then do 1, 2, 3, and write like 4 words, put a big circle around it, and then be like, okay, I'm good. And then he would stand up and he would give his final focus every single time. I would see him circle it, and I'd be like, oh yeah, get it. So the last thing that we wanted to talk about is just sort of just psychological stuff. This was something that I delved super deep into for no understandable reason. I just wanted to be better.
Fun fact, Quentin never told me the reasoning behind any of the stuff he's about to tell you. It was just like one day out of nowhere, Quentin was very particular about some of the stuff we would do in rounds, and I just kind of went with it because he was the creator and I was the consumer, so that's just how it worked.
I just did research into like the psychology of argumentation, and this was some of the stuff I found, and I think it seemed to work. I mean, it's little stuff. It's not going to be like if you say these 6 words, in this exact order, the judge will love you and do anything you want and vote for you. It's just little things. One being, if you have the option, sit on the judge's left. So you would be, if there's
Stage right.
right, if there's two tables, sit on the one that the judge sees on the left. Is that stage right?
Yeah.
Okay. The reasoning for this is just in a lot of studies, they've shown that people are more likely to choose the leftmost option if something is up in the air. If there are two things in front of them that are the exact same, people typically choose the one on the left. No idea why. So if it's if the judge is up in the air, you being on the left gives you more of an opportunity to win just based on some psychology.
Can I talk about the next one?
Yeah.
Cool, because this is something that I did a lot without realizing it. I didn't understand that this was a thing. So when you're negating an argument and you're doing that initial link turn or block, whatever you want to call it, you don't need to make it sound ridiculous. You don't need to make it sound like it's the dumbest idea ever. You don't need to call it hogwash or anything I've heard when judging rounds. You actually are going to gain a lot more ground if you make it sound like they're coming from a good place and they probably have good intentions, but there's just a few logical issues with it that we need to point out and discuss. And apparently it's called the Yale attitude change approach, where if you walk into a room and you say, that guy's dumb, he doesn't know what he's talking about, I know what I'm talking about, I have the best words, people just by default aren't going to like you as much. And they're probably going to try and listen to what the other guy is saying more so in spite of the fact that you just said, that guy's dumb, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But if you say, hey, that guy, he made a good point. He has some good arguments to talk about today, and it's important that we talk about them, but it's also important that we talk about the issues that we have with them. And these are some of those.
Right. Yep, that is called the Yale attitude change approach. It's just the difference between being rude and...
Well, it's getting away from bias.
Right.
You're saying that their ideas have merit, but there's a couple problems that need addressed, rather than their idea is dumb and we don't need to talk about it.
Right. So then the judge says, okay, they're not just arguing against it because they're on the other side. They're actually considering it and finding real issues with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the idea. It gives you a lot more of a foundation of knowledge and trust between you and the judge that's not based around bias. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That was a good way to put it. Now, wording, as you know, in debate is huge. The words you choose to use, how you word things. These are things called ultimate terms. I didn't name it. I think it sounds weird.
Quentin named it.
I did not. These are terms that you can use to describe something as good or bad, describe something you're supporting versus not supporting. That just using words like these will give your judge sort of a subconscious feeling about them.
No, it's weird that you say that, because now I'm looking at them and I'm reading them and I'm thinking about things that include these words, and the first one that comes to mind, dude, is Magic 8 Ball. The future is uncertain.
Yeah.
The answer is complicated.
Right. So, yeah, so some of these words they're called God and devil terms. Again, I didn't name these. But when you're describing your side or an argument you're supporting, you're going to want to use terms like guarantee, proven, truth, discover. Positive and powerful words like these. These will give your judge a sense of trust and belief in relation to your side and what you're supporting. Now, devil terms are words you're going to use when describing your opponents or their points or what they're supporting. You're going to use words like uncertain, complicated, outdated, scarce, that kind of thing.
Did you mean scarce?
No. I said that one time, Lucas.
Can that be the promo code for today?
Scarce?
Scarce.
It's the same word. I mispronounced it like 2 hours ago, it feels like. Leave me alone. I'm going to go back over this one more time because I forgot even what I was talking about.
Quinn's doing a great job, everybody. Let's give him a quick hand. Okay, please continue.
Devil terms. Use these to describe your opponents, their side, the things that they're trying to support. Words like uncertain, complicated, outdated, and scarce. These will give your judge a negative view of that side. Just subconsciously, just these words have a negative connotation with them without just outright saying our opponents are awful.
And this isn't a miracle cure-all for winning every round.
Not at all.
And that's why Quentin prefaced it with what he did. But I just want to reaffirm that this is some basic psychology stuff that doesn't always work, but it's just research trends have shown that it kind of works sometimes.
It can just a tiny leg up.
And it's not,
if at all.
It's not dirty. It's not anything like that. Because again, everybody has the ability to do these kinds of things, to use language that is going to give a certain kind of bias to your side.
Right. Like this sitting on the left. We didn't get to sit on the left every time. You know, usually what happens is it was whatever team walked in first went to the farthest desk, you know? But it was just one of those things that when we had the chance, we sat on the left just because it could give us a little bit of a leg up. That kind of thing. Yeah, it's not the answer to winning the finals round of nationals.
Definitely not. These are small things that you could consider adding to your debate repertoire.
Yeah, just interesting things that I stumbled across years ago and we just started doing. And I mean, we didn't do any scientific method. We didn't test it. Just a couple, just possible little legs up. Yeah.
I think that that sums up what we talked about today. Would you give me a scroll up on the outline there?
Yeah.
So yeah, today we talked about
Flex
cases, evidence condensation,
turns, including link turns, impact turns, double turns, and double turns with a preface.
Yes. We talked about crossfire strats for both the first speaker and the second speaker, and for Grand Crossfire.
Freeform flowing, which is very important, or at least something that you should check out and try.
And we talked a little bit about some psychological stuff.
Let's you know, I think the promo code today should be FLEX. What do you think? Scarce or scarce or whatever it is, it makes me feel bad.
That's okay. It's okay that you feel bad because you showed you mispronounced it. But
it literally has been like 3 years since I said that word.
That's not my fault.
But whenever you look at the word, basic English says that should be pronounced like scarce.
You want to explain to me why that is?
Because if you take off the last CE, that's scar.
No, it's not.
If you take off the front S and the last CE, that's car.
Yeah, but there's another vowel after the first vowel, which makes the first vowel soft.
Okay, well, Lucas, I can't read.
That's you're talking about basic English, and you just misquoted a pretty major rule of grammar, which is if you have two vowels separated by consonants, the first vowel is soft almost every time.
Well, I can't read.
Okay, I mean that was pretty well indicated by your performance.
I listen to audiobooks instead.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of loser would just listen to something when they could read it for themselves?
Yeah.
Right?
Like a podcast.
Yeah.
Dumb idiots.
Just kidding. We love you. Please don't leave. I'm okay with Flex. I think Flex will be a good promo code for this week.
Flex for $5 off.
The first release on the Saudi Arabia topic for Candor Briefs.
Available at candordebate.com. Just enter the word Flex at checkout.
Is that already available, or is it going to be available really soon?
Yeah, no, the first release is out.
Okay. So yeah, first release is out and available. Promo code FLEX at checkout. There should be a place for you to put that in.
Yep.
If you're having any troubles with it, email us at candorbriefs@gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter at candorbriefs.
Or former partners at Gmail and at former partners.
On Twitter.
Podcast stuff.
Yeah, either one.
Next week, we'll have an in-depth episode on the Saudi Arabia topic.
I'm excited.
Do a couple practice debates. There's a lot of unique arguments that actually I want to talk to you about after we finish up here.
That's totally fine by me. We can talk about them in the car.
So yeah, we'll have that episode next week, same time as always, which will probably be about 5 a.m. on Friday, because it takes me a while to edit. It's taken me a lot less time now.
Now that we figured out our audio issue?
Yep. Stupid stuff.
Yeah,
That's
Quentin's
so
really good at Adobe Audition.
I really am. It was just that one thing. We're not going to talk about it.
Yeah, his information on how to use the software is a little scarce.
It's just... All right. Okay.
This has been Former Partners Podcast. I'm Lucas.
And I'm Quentin. And, I'm so mad.
You want to do the outro for us?
Yeah.
I love it when you say it.
This has been Former Partners. Thanks, enjoy, and good luck.